How's it going? Morning, Shira. Morning, Becky. Morning, Renee. Renee, how are you feeling? Are you feeling better than you were yesterday? I know you had a migraine situation going on last night, which is not fun. Much better, slept it off. Excellent. That's what we like to hear. We like to hear that it did what it needed to do and went bye-bye. Bye-bye. We don't need it. Say goodbye. Actually, I should close this up and put it by the door so I remember to take it. I'm going down to Orange County later to see the babies. And I should take that to UPS while I go. I must see the small children. I must see them. I love them so much. They're my babies. They're not really mine. They belong to my sister. Hey, Rosie. But I pretend that they are mine and I will go visit them. Morning, Amanda. So that is what we are doing, or what I am doing today. I have work to do first. And maybe I will see you to pick up the charms. Do you want me to come on? I'll come on the way back. I'll pass by you on the way back, Shira. What I have to do is I have to pack up the rest of the orders that I didn't pack up last night, which is almost all of them. Then I have to go down and take them to the post office, and then I have to go get some stuff for my mom because she had some like issue with her mail, so I have to go take care of that. And then I have to go to the P.O. box and get stuff from the P.O. box. And then I'm gonna go hang out with the kiddos, and then I have to pick up stuff for my mom somewhere else and bring that back here with me, amongst other stuff. So I'll pick stuff up from you on the drive back after I get my mom's last thing. It is a busy day. And then when I come back here, I'll make slime. Poor mom had a mail issue, and since she's not in town, I have to go down and take care of it. Tis un problema. Un problema. But the orders will go out first, so that's the important thing. I guess. I think. Yeah. But since I have to go pick up the mail anyway, I can take that thing to drop off the espresso stuff. Pods. Recycle. I'm spinning water in it to clean it now. A little bit more than it. I usually scrub it out after. But I just wanted to see what happens if I just spun water in it. Kind of funny. Did it do anything? Not really. Okay, well, live and learn, right? I will soak it and I will clean it after. I don't want to get out of bed. I don't blame you. I don't blame you. I don't blame you at all. But we're going to read. We're going to read chapter 1 of Land of Stories. We read the prologue yesterday. It was fascinating. I'm thrilled, as always, about the Land of Stories. I have meetings, though I have to at least brush my hair. Wow. You have to at least brush your hair. Okay. Okay, so someone with the username Mambo number 5 just entered, and I hope they stayed because I have a story about that song that I'm going to tell all of you now as a result of them joining. Did you guys see the thing about Stephen King, the author, being obsessed with that song? Did anybody else see this, or was it just me? He said he went on record as saying he was so obsessed with that song that his wife almost divorced him because he played it so much. Like, not like jokingly, like she was like, that's enough. Which I think is awful, but also really funny. Especially if it's going to be someone like Stephen King. You know what I mean? I don't know why I find it so entertaining, but I definitely do. I definitely do find it entertaining. Oh, for anyone who is a part of Only Slimes, I after the live last night, hey Becca, after the live last night, Secret Boyfriend, what had this happen? Oh yeah, I needed to pack orders last night. So while I was packing orders last night, like all the ones from, what do you call it, from the live, Secret Boyfriend decided to go work on our t-shirt design, which is also going to be a sticker and honestly probably a bunch of other stuff because it's so good. Like he showed it to me after and we like did some editing on it and he let me make changes like to things I want. This is the thing that you guys have to know about Secret Boyfriend. Secret Boyfriend can draw. Like I can't draw. And so he has one of those pads that's like a digital thing and he has the screen and he can just like draw on the pad like this what I want on the screen. And so when I was like, well, I need the drips there to like drip a little more. He's like, okay, hold on. And he takes the pen and he like pulls the drips down the way that I want. It's very fun. It's a very fun process. But um the the fun thing is it's looking really good. Like the design is really cool. I think everyone's gonna be really happy with it. Hey, a little bit of drawing ability. I have zero drawing ability. Um yeah, it would be nice if we could have behind the scene content, but we can't because his computers are um even if I just showed like the computer or whatever, his computers are technically owned by his company, all the big computers that he uses. So they've got like logo stuff on them. Yeah, even if he like cleared the screen, even the computers themselves have like stuff on them because they're owned by the company. So I can't do that, which is unfortunate, I know, but I promise you that you're gonna love the design. Um, he doesn't use any Apple products. He's so used to what he's worked on for so long that he just you have three working toilets again. Well, hooray! It's good. That's half as many humans as are in your house, which I guess is good. In our home, we have as many toilets as humans because there's only two of us. And if he can get any better, he does. I know, right? Greg Christie, tell me about it. I'm not even allowed to go in my husband's office because of the work stuff. Yeah, yeah, I'm allowed to go in there. And they know because they can see me like during meetings and stuff, like sometimes behind or whatever. Guess what it was? Everyone. It was everyone. Oh no. Oh no, that sounds scary. I wish I had three family of six with one bathroom. Yeah, that's not cute. No, everyone guess. I think it was a Hot Wheels car. Oh, Amanda, that makes sense. That's completely different. There is proprietary stuff in what Secret Boyfriend does, but they have like code names for everything at the stage they're at right now. Um, yeah, duct tape. Duct tape? Which of your children was playing with duct tape, or was it your wife? I wouldn't have expected duct tape. Oh, is Max home or is he at school? I would have a chat with him if he was here. Yes, that's probably what it was, Shira.
So anyway, the moral of this story, as far as the drawing situation goes, is that he's going to finish the design over the next day or two. So we'll have them soon. I think I'm going to print them on a couple of different colors. I don't really want to use the on-demand system that we've been using. It's okay, but it's not great. So I was thinking of doing pre-orders so that we could order them. Are you going to snap the slime? Yeah, I am. Yeah. I have one sitting on the desk waiting to be photographed right now. He is extremely talented. He's going to make the drips look like the drips he drew for my logo. I don't know if any of you remember what the like rainbow slime girl on the top of my YouTube and Patreon looks like, but he hand drew all of those drips that are on that. And so he's going to do the same style so that it looks like it matches, the Patreon and everything. I think that was the upstairs toilet. He didn't get anything out, but it works out. Yep. Her will to live. Oh, Ellie. She's a funny one. She's a funny kid, that's for sure. So anyway, what I was saying is I think I'm gonna print some on pink and some on black. Um, as far as the shirts go, and then we'll have stickers and I don't know what else. No, she didn't want to be there. She wants to come hang out with me instead, obviously. I think she made that pretty clear, Becca. Okay. So, well, Jim, Jesus Christ. I didn't want to go to gym either. Let's read chapter 1 of Land of Stories, book 4. The prologue was phenomenal. In case any of you weren't here yesterday, this is what the cover looks like. And there's also a little fold out map that we haven't really had. She wants to be me. She can be me. I'll share. I don't say that for a lot of people. Usually I'm like, no, be you. But when I look at Ellie, I'm like, yeah, that's fine. Be me. Maybe this is the child you bring to Disney with you, Becca, because that'll make her smile. Um, I well, Becca, you missed it earlier. I'm going down to Orange County to run some errands for my mom and see the kids later, but we haven't read any chapters yet, Becca. So you didn't really miss enough for it to be a problem for chapter 1. But I am going to put the prologue up later. I might be live later tonight, just regular here on TikTok. I'm not 100% sure. It depends on when I get back from Orange County. Um, oh, yummy, yucky plumber stuff. Oh, goodbye. Gross. I don't want anything to do with that. Um, all right. Chapter 1 is called The Witch's Brew. The Witch's Brew. The creatures of the dwarf forest knew to avoid Dead Man's Creek tonight if they valued their lives. At midnight of every full moon, witches. Oh, we read this already. Oh, this is. So remember how yesterday everyone was saying we needed a recap of what. That's adorable. Send pictures, Liz. Everyone was saying we needed a recap of what happened in the last one. Remember, we read this first chapter. I'll read it again, but this first chapter was at the end of the last book, and we read it already. So this is going to be our recap, actually. At midnight of every full moon, witches from the forest and neighboring kingdoms gathered at the creek. The meetings there were strictly for witches only, and they enjoyed making gruesome examples out of those who disturbed them. Dead Man's Creek was shrouded in mystery, making it an ideal place for the witches to assemble. Every so often, without any warning or explanation, the creek redirected itself to flow uphill and into the forest, and every time the rerouting occurred, the coffins floated from an unknown location. The dead bodies in the coffin were never identified, nor who or what had sent them. Not at any time, not that any time was given for an investigation. When corpses were found, the witches picked them apart like vultures, taking home what they needed in jars to stock their potion supplies. The midnight gatherings were held at the Witch's Brew, an old tavern made entirely of twigs and mulch that sat at the middle of the creek like a giant beaver dam. Smoke rose from the tavern's single chimney, filling the air with a foul odor and signaling to the witches traveling to the creek that the meeting was about to begin. The gatherings were usually uneventful and low in attendance. However, due to the recent crisis that had taken the kingdoms by storm, the attendance tonight was expected to be much higher than usual. Some witches traveled to the creek on foot or by mule. Flocks of witches flew towards the tavern's smoky signal on broomsticks. A few sailed down the creek by boat or makeshift rafts. Even some others slithered up the water like serpents. At midnight, the tavern was fuller than it had ever been. 100 or so witches were seated around an enormous cauldron at the center of the tavern, while latecomers stood in the back. Dark magic was known for leaving their mark on those who partook in it. And each of the women's appearances had been affected differently. Some of the witches had warts, enlarged noses, decaying flesh, or an eyeball that hung out of their sockets. Others had been transformed past the point of appearing human and resembled other species. They had hooves or horns and tails and feathers, and some even had snouts and a beak. A short and stout witch with skin made of stone approached the cauldron. She threw a handful of rocks inside, and the liquid glowed, illuminating the room in a menacing green light. The meeting had begun. "Welcome, sisters," the stone witch said in a gruff voice. "I am Gargolia, the stone mistress of the dwarf forests. I assume we've all come tonight to discuss the same matter, so let's not waste any time." The witches looked around the tavern and nodded to one another. They may have been a diverse group, but they were united in paranoia. "Hey, Mary, how's the baby? Is she with us? Do we have baby? We must have baby." Do we have baby? How are you and the baby? Aw, hi, baby. What color hair did she get? We got a new baby in the group. Blue eyes, brown hair. Aw, pretty baby. Are you sharing her name? You don't have to publicly if you're not, but if you are, let us know. She's our newest. Little smoosh. Blue eyes. Kind of like Zoe. Autumn. Aw, that's my friend's name. Aw. Her name is Autumn Lee. That's beautiful. That is beautiful. Wonderful. We love to see it. And she was born in autumn, so it fits. Thank you, Sarah. I love it too. Good morning, everybody. If you ever have a baby, can I come stalk you? Sure. Yeah. If I ever have a baby, everybody can come hold the baby. There you go. I can say with the utmost certainty at this exact moment, I am 100% not pregnant for reasons that every woman can understand, because there is something going on that tells me with utmost certainty that is not the truth. Wah wah for me. Yeah, it's painful. It's the worst pain. I hate it. But I'm powering through it, and I'm pretending to be a witch instead of complaining. Right, it happened right after, Becca. So yeah, I'm glad it didn't happen during the wedding. That would have been really, really embarrassing to say the least. Yeah. Blue dress, red marks. Slime belly maternity pictures. That would be really cute. Yeah, super unfortunate, really uncomfortable. All right, back to our witches, because we have a new baby in the group, and this is the perfect book to initiate a new child into our group. We're reading the first chapter of the New Land of Stories. Welcome, little one. Come to our group and enjoy a new fairy tale. The witches looked around the tavern and nodded to one another. They may have been diverse in group, but they were united in their paranoia. Serpentina, a witch with scaly green skin and a long forked tongue, took the floor. "We are here to discuss the missing children," she hissed. "So, let me be the first to say, whichever witch is taking them needs to be stopped once before she gets us all killed." Most of the tavern was outraged by her remarks. Coralina, a witch made of ash and soot, Charcoaline, a witch made of ash and soot, hit the side of her seat so hard that her fist crumbled off. How dare you blame us? She hollered at Serpentina. Embers flew out of her mouth as she spoke. As her temper rose, a lava-like glow filled the cracks in her skin. We're always the first one to be accused whenever there's a crisis. I expected better from someone within our own kind. Arborus, a witch whose hair was made of sticks and whose body was covered in tree bark, stood by Serpentina's side. 12 children from the Corner Kingdom and 12 children from the Charming Kingdom have disappeared without a trace, Arborus said. Only a witch would be stealthy and brave enough to commit such a crime, and she's probably among us in this tavern. Tarantuline, a large witch with fangs and 4 hairy arms and 4 hairy legs, descended from the ceiling on a web produced from her abdomen. If you two are so certain witches kidnapped the children, perhaps it was one of you. She growled, pointing all 4 of her hands at them. The tavern grew increasingly loud as each witch voiced her own opinion on the matter. Gargolina threw another handful of rocks into the cauldron, and a blinding flash of green light hushed the crowd. Silence! Gargolina yelled. It doesn't matter which witch is responsible. The kingdoms will hold all of us responsible when we're caught. I've heard rumors that the witch hunt is being organized throughout the villages. We must prepare ourselves. A witch wearing scarlet robes stepped forward. May I offer a suggestion? She asked calmly. She lowered her hood, and a few witches gasped. She was completely normal, looked like a middle-aged woman, and a pretty one at that. Hageta, Gargolina said with a dirty gaze. After all this time, you finally graced us with your presence. She doesn't belong here, Serpentina hissed. She's an embarrassment to real witches, Charcolina said. Chastising Hageta was the only thing all the witches could agree on, but Hageta had come to the tavern expecting to cause a fuss. Practicing white magic doesn't make me any less of a witch than you, Hageta said, and I guarantee you no one outside this tavern is going to care what kind of witchcraft I practice if more children disappear. Angry mobs will sweep through the woods until every last witch is found. We'll all be rounded up and burned at the stake, so unlike the rest of you, I've come to present a solution that will hopefully prevent a witch hunt from happening. The witches mumbled and grumbled insults at her. Gargolina tossed another handful of rocks into the cauldron to quiet them. None of us want a witch hunt, so if Hageta thinks she can save us from one, let her speak, she said. But make it quick, I'm out of rocks. Hageta looked around the tavern, making eye contact with as many witches as possible. She knew it would be a challenging audience, but she wasn't going to leave until she convinced them. I say we stop assigning blame and put our efforts into finding the perpetrator, she said. The world has always blamed us, all of us, for an individual witch's mistake. None of us would have come tonight if we were responsible. So let us work together and turn over the one who is responsible. We'll prove our innocence if we decide to help the kingdom solve the mystery of the missing children. We can't turn in one of our own. This is a sisterhood, Coralina yelled. It won't be much of a sisterhood if we're all dead, Serpentina said. The last thing humans want is help from witches, Arborus argued. A witch standing in the back with a large stomach and a carrot-like nose burst into tears, and the entire tavern turned to her. I'm sorry, the emotional witch said. I just relate to what Hageta is saying. I'm not a saint, but I've been blamed my entire life for things I'm innocent of. She blew her nose into the cloak of a witch standing next to her. There's no such thing as an innocent witch, shouted a deep voice that no one was expecting to hear. Suddenly, the front doors of the tavern burst open, causing all the witches to jolt. A man wearing a sack over his head strolled into the tavern as if he owned it. A dozen soldiers in red and white uniforms followed behind him. All the witches jumped to their feet, outraged by the intrusion. Forgive us for the interruption, ladies. And I use that term loosely, the masked man said with a cocky laugh. I've been listening to your discussion all night, and I'm afraid I can't keep quiet any longer. How dare you disturb us? Gargolina shouted. No one disturbs us and lives to tell... He raised his hand to tell her to silence.
Before you turn us into mice or your familiars to eat, please allow me to introduce myself, he said. They call me the Masked Man for obvious reasons. The men behind me are what's left of the Grand Armée that nearly conquered the world 5 months ago. Perhaps you've heard of us? Although none of them had been directly involved with the recent war, the witches knew very well about the pandemonium the Grand Armée had caused. For their familiar to eat, not to eat their familiar. You like my eyebrows? Well, thank you so much, Lainey. After this chapter, remind me to tell you a funny story about eyebrows. This man is a joke, Hagetta said, knowing that she had to intervene somehow before the witch's curiosity grew any more. He's filled your heads with tales of grandeur, about how he led the army, raised a dragon, but in the end, a dying old fairy made him run for his life. The masked man scowled at her. So you've heard of me at least, he said. He looked up at Hagetta. There was something very familiar about that witch. He was certain that their paths had crossed a long time ago, but he didn't waste any time recalling it. He had come to the tavern with a purpose, and the witches weren't going to give him much time. I haven't come here to impress you. I've come here to establish a partnership by offering you a warning, he said. We don't need partnerships with the likes of you, Gargolina said. The masked man continued his pitch despite her unwillingness. You have the right to be worried, he said. It's widely believed that a witch is responsible for the missing children in the villages that lost their young are not taking it lightly. I've lived in hiding for months, and I've learned about their upcoming retaliation. They aren't planning a witch hunt. They're planning an extermination. The news was heavy for the witches. Was the masked man trying to rile them up, or was the situation even worse than they feared? Which is why we need to find the witch responsible while we still can, Hagetta said. The masked man shook his head. I'm afraid there's nothing you could do to prevent this, he said. Even if you prove every witch here was innocent, the massacre will still occur. They don't want justice for the missing children. They want justice for every crime that your kind has ever committed against theirs. They're using the missing children as an excuse to seek centuries' worth of revenge. The witches went quiet. Relations between the witches and mankind had never been easy, and the missing children may have angered the kingdom of man past the point of no return. You try to start wars wherever you go, Hagetta said, desperately trying to belittle the information he was presenting. We cannot listen to this man. He won't be satisfied until the whole world burns. The masked man smiled. There will be battles and fights, but you're giving yourself too much credit if you think there will be a war, he teased. Witches won't stand a chance once they're targeted. You're too outnumbered. Soon, your kind will be as extinct as dragons. The emotional witch in the back burst into tears again. She hunched over and vomited on the floor. Sorry, she peeped. I'm overwhelmed easily. Colonel Rambert, who stood amongst the soldiers of the Grand Armée, raised an eyebrow at her. Something about this witch didn't sit well with him. I think the happily forever after assembly is behind the kidnappings, the masked man said. The fairies have always wanted to get rid of the witches, and inspiring a massive witch extermination would just do the trick. I wouldn't be surprised if the new fairy godmother kidnapped the children herself. The fairy godmother would never kidnap 24 children, one of the heads of the two-headed witch in the back said. Rat Mary, a mousy witch with thick, bushy hair and enormous buck teeth, stood on her seat to get the tavern's attention. If the fairies aren't behind it, I'm sure they encouraged it, she said. They want to live in a world without witchcraft, Arborist said. They want magic solely for themselves, Serpentina hissed. The witches were easily convinced that the missing children had been a scheme concocted against the witches, and soon the entire tavern roared with hatred for the fairies. The masked man had the witches exactly where he wanted them. It's time the witches fought back, the masked man said. The witches cheered, but Gargolina shook her head, acting as the voice of reason. That would be suicide, she said. You just said we were outnumbered, especially if the fairies are involved. The masked man rubbed his hands together. Not if you make the right friends, he said snidely. With my help, we can raise another army. The witches cackled at him. The idea seemed ridiculous. Hagetta quickly reclaimed the floor. An army? An army of what? She laughed. Besides, you already had an army, and you failed miserably. Who would trust you to handle another? The masked man jerked his head toward her. Clearly, she had touched on a sore subject. I have never failed, he yelled. I have spent my entire life planning a way to abolish fairies. So far, I have succeeded in every step of my plan. The Grand Armée, the dragon, the attack on the fairy palace were never meant to defeat them, just weaken them. Once they thought the fight was over, I snuck into the palace and retrieved a potion that I've been after since the very beginning. Now that that potion is in my possession, the real war can begin. Beads of sweat soaked through the sack on the masked man's head. He took a few deep breaths to calm himself down, but before I can begin the next phase of my plan, I need your assistance, he continued. There was something else in the fairy palace I meant to steal along with the potion, a collection of sorts, but the late fairy godmother must have gotten rid of it. I need your help finding where she put it. Once we find it and combine it with the potion, I'll be able to recruit the new army. Gargolina crossed her arms. But what kind of army? She asked. If the Grand Armée and the dragon weren't enough to obliterate the fairies, what is? An army beyond your wildest imaginations, the masked man said with theatrical gestures. An army that will make the Grand Armée look like a gang of children. I've been dreaming and scheming about this since I was a boy, and with your help, we can bring it here. We can lead this army together, and the world will be ours. The witches couldn't tell if the masked man was insane or if there was merit to what he was saying. The emotional witch couldn't contain herself after hearing his speech. I'm sorry. It's so nice to see a man so passionate about something. She cried, and tears spilled down her face. Colonel Rambert eyed the witch suspiciously. As the witch cried, her carrot-like nose was washed away by her tears. It was a disguise. Sir, I believe we are the company of more than just witches, Rambert shouted to the masked man. He quickly retrieved his pistol from inside his vest and aimed it at the witch. Suddenly, the emotional witch leapt into the air and somersaulted towards Rambert, drawing a long sword from inside her cloak and sliced off the tip of the pistol as she landed at Rambert's feet. The witch moaned and held her stomach. Somersaulting is more difficult when you're pregnant, she said. The masked man stared down at the impostor. She wasn't a witch after all. Goldilocks, he screamed. Goldilocks, what are you doing here in the tavern? Hagetta said. Hey, Hagetta, Goldilocks said. We followed you here. We knew the masked man couldn't resist an audience with the witches. We? Hagetta asked. The masked man backhanded Rambert across the face. You idiot! You led us right into her trap, he shouted. Seize her! The soldiers of the Grand Armée rushed towards Goldilocks with their weapons raised. Now, she yelled. 4 figures in the back threw off their disguises. Jack, Red Riding Hood, Froggy, and the third little pig had been among the witches the entire time. The 2-headed witch charged toward the masked man, separating into 2 different people as she closed in. Alex and Connor Bailey. The 2 circled the masked man. Alex pointed her crystal wand at him, and Connor raised his sword. You aren't the only one with masks, dude, Connor said. Alex didn't say anything. She was clutching her wand so hard she was afraid it might break in her hand. After months and months of agonizingly searching, they had finally found him. She would unmask the man and expose his true identity to the world. It's over, Alex told him. No one is going anywhere this time. Alex flicked her wand at the windows and doors, and metal bars appeared over them. The twins, their friends, the witches, the soldiers, and the masked man were all trapped inside the tavern. It's the fairy godmother, Rat Mary screamed, and the tavern erupted in chaos. The witches ran around the place as if it were on fire. With no exit, the disorder was only growing. It was hard for the twins to keep track of the soldiers and the masked man with all the panicking women running around them. It was incredibly overwhelming, and Alex felt her heart beating faster and faster. She could not lose the masked man again, not after coming so close last time. Enough! Alex yelled. Her eyes began to glow, and her hair floated above her head. Without Alex raising her wand, vines shot out of the ground and wrapped around each of the witches and the Grand Armée soldiers and pulled them to the floor. Connor looked around nervously. Alex, snap out of it, he whispered. Remember to stay focused so you can control your powers. Alex shook her head and snapped out of the daze the emotions had put her in. Her hair fell into her eyes and stopped glowing. She had been having difficulty controlling her powers in recent months, but she didn't care if the vines were summoned consciously or subconsciously. Capturing the masked man was the only thing that mattered to her. You're a powerful girl, but if you're going to make the witches angry, you're going to make the witches angry if you treat them like this, the masked man said, looking around the tavern for any possible escape. I'll take my chances, Alex said. Very well, so will I. The masked man leapt towards the cauldron and pushed it over. Liquid spilled all over the floor and went dim, causing the tavern to go pitch black. Alex waved her wand, and torches appeared on the walls, restoring the light, but the masked man was gone. "Alex, look!" Connor yelled and pointed toward the fireplace. "He's going up the chimney!" "He's headed for the roof." She looked just in time to see the masked man's feet disappear up the fireplace. Alex dashed toward it and climbed up after him. The witches fought against the vines restraining them. Serpentina, Tarantullina, Rat Mary, and Charcolina broke free and zeroed in on Connor and the others. "We will not be disrespected in our own tavern," Rat Mary yelled. She stretched out her hand and a broomstick flew into it. She hopped on board and flew in circles around Connor, scratching and smacking him as she went. "Ouch! Ouch!" Connor yelled. "Knock it off, rat lady!" He grabbed her broom handle, and the two of them zoomed around the tavern, bouncing off walls and ceilings like a ping-pong ball. Serpentina crawled across the walls like a lizard and lunged for Goldilocks. The expectant mother swung her sword and sliced off the witch's left arm. Goldilocks looked at the severed arm on the floor and burst into tears. "I'm so sorry," she sobbed, her tears quickly disappearing. "Wait a second, no, I'm not. Damn these hormones." It was good that she came to her senses because Serpentina's arm grew back almost instantaneously. Her tongue rolled out of her mouth and swirled around Goldilocks like a slimy red whip. It wrapped around Goldilocks' foot and jerked her to the ground. Jack ran across the tavern to help his wife, but Arborist stood in his way. Hundreds of insects crawled out of the witch's tree bark skin and attacked him, biting and stinging him all over his body. He dropped to the floor and rolled around, frantically brushing them off. Oh, God. Tarantuline had her sights set on Froggy. She chased him around the tavern, fire blasting webs at him as they ran. "I hate spiders! I hate spiders!" Froggy shouted as he leapt away from her. "I can't believe we agreed to do this tonight. I have a kingdom to run." Instead of running to her friend's aid, Red had a seat with the third little pig and placed a thick binder between them. "Since everyone is busy, I think that we should take this moment to finalize the details of the wedding planning," she said cheerfully, flipping through the binder. "Of course, your former and future majesty," the third little pig said. "Darling, I don't think this is a good time for planning our wedding," Froggy said, barely dodging the web being shot at him. "The wedding is days away, Charlie," Red said. "We've spent so much time helping the twins track down the masked man. I've barely had time to plan anything. Now, let's see. Oh, yes, I have to pick out the right fabric for the tablecloths." She pulled out 3 samples of red fabric that were neatly tucked into the binder. "What do you think, sweetheart? Should we go with the Ruby Rock, the Blushington, or the Blood Blossom?" she asked and held the samples up to him. A rogue string of web shot towards Red, knocking a fabric sample out of her hand, sticking it to the wall. "Oh, nice suggestion," she said. "Ruby Rock it is." "Yes, ma'am," the third little pig said and took note of the decision on a small pad. Connor couldn't hold onto the broomstick any longer. He let go, and Rat Mary spun in opposite directions. Rat Mary crashed into Serpentina just as she was about to pounce on Goldilocks, and they both hit the floor. Connor landed on top of Charcoline. The witch roared at him, and her entire body glowed from the lava building up inside her. She opened her mouth, and a fiery jet erupted from it like a dragon. Connor dove behind the sideways cauldron, barely missing the inferno. "I could use a little help over here. Things are getting heated," Connor yelled to his friends. Hagetta knelt down and placed an open palm on the floor. She closed her eyes and concentrated. A rumbling traveled from beneath Hagetta to under Charcoline, and a geyser of water shot up under the ground beneath her. Blasting her to the side of the tavern, Hagetta redirected the rumbling, and another geyser erupted underneath Arborist, sending her across the tavern too. Goldilocks ran to Jack's side and helped him brush the insects off his body, and she suddenly hunched over in pain. "Goldie, are you all right?" Jack asked. "The baby's just kicking," she said. "I think it wants to join the fight. Boy or girl, it still sure got a strong kick." "Just like his mother," Jack said with a smile. At the other side of the tavern, Red was losing patience with Froggy. "What should we use as the centerpiece for the tables?" Red asked. "Candles or flowers?" There was no response. Froggy was still frantically jumping away from Tarantullina. He was panting and slowing down. Each shot of the web the witch aimed at him was closer call than the one before. "Charlie, why do I feel like I'm the only one who cares about this wedding?" she asked. "The least you can do is give me an answer." She looked over her shoulder and saw that Froggy was stuck to the wall, twisted in Tarantuline's sticky web. The spider witch walked towards him with her fangs exposed. Froggy turned a shade of pale green. "I won't taste good," Froggy yelled. Nice try, but Frog is my favorite, Tarantuline growled. Just as she was about to sink her fangs into him, Red hit her over the head with a chair. The witch fell to the floor and didn't move. Well done, darling, Froggy cheered. Red dragged the chair closer to him and had a seat. Charlie, since I finally have you pinned down for a moment, I think now is a good time to talk about the guest list. Froggy sighed. There was no avoiding wedding planning now. Meanwhile, the masked man crawled through the opening in the chimney and stepped out onto the roof. He ran along the edge, looking for a way down. Alex was right behind him. But as she squeezed through the top of the chimney, her arms became trapped at her sides and she couldn't reach her wand. The masked man got to his hands and knees and carefully started climbing down to the ground. You are not escaping this time, Alex yelled. Just as they had before, her eyes glowed and her hair floated above her head. Suddenly, the entire tavern began to sway. It rocked back and forth and then departed from the creek entirely and rose into the air like a giant balloon. Alex, I hope you're doing this on purpose, Connor said. There was no response. He crawled up the chimney after her. The tavern floated higher and higher into the air, flying above the trees of the dwarf forest and into the clouds. The chimney around Alex broke away brick by brick, and she was freed. There was no way the masked man could escape. This was finally Alex's chance to ask him about what she had been obsessing over for months. Just tell me why, she said. Why did you lie to us? And why did you pretend to be dead? Life would be so dull if we knew all the answers, the masked man said, eyeing the ground below as it disappeared from view. How could you do this to your own family? We loved you. Wait a second. The masked man laughed. You're leaning in... Wait. How could you do this to your own family? She asked desperately. We loved you. The masked man laughed. You're learning it the hard way, just like I had to, he said. There's no such thing as love. Families are just strangers who share blood. They claim to love you unconditionally, but in the end, they always betray you the most. My mother taught me that lesson, and now you're learning it from me. Alex shook her head. You're sick, she said. I don't know how you ended up like this, but Connor and I can help you. She extended an open hand, but the masked man glared at it. Connor crawled through the broken chimney and cautiously joined his sister's side. Alex, are you talking to the moon? He said. There were thousands of feet in the air now, well above the clouds. Alex hadn't noticed how high the tavern had floated, and she didn't care. Face it, you don't have a choice. Face it, you don't have a choice, Alex told the masked man. There's only one way down, and you're coming with us. The masked man reached into his jacket pocket and pulled out a small book with a gold cover and blue potion bottle. Alex immediately recognized the small vial as the bottle he had stolen from the fairy palace. You're wrong, he said softly. There's always a choice. The masked man rolled off the roof and plummeted back to the earth. The twins screamed and ran to the edge of the roof to look over it. The masked man fell through the clouds and disappeared from sight. I can't believe it, Connor said. He killed himself. Alex shook her head in disbelief. No, she said. It wasn't supposed to end this way. We're supposed to help him. A thousand feelings spiraled through her like an emotional tornado. She was so overwhelmed that she could barely focus on anything. Her hair fell back into place and her eyes returned to normal. The tavern suddenly dropped through the sky. The twins and everyone inside the tavern began to scream. Connor held onto the broken chimney with one hand and his sister with the other so they wouldn't fly off of it. Pieces of the tavern broke off as it fell. A large chunk of the roof flew off and the twins could see their friends inside, holding on to anything that they could. I'd like to get married in one piece, please, Red screamed. Alex, do something, Connor yelled at her. It was hard for Alex to get a grip on her wand as they fell. When she did, she raised it above her head and cracked it like a whip just before they reached the ground. As if the tavern were connected to an invisible bungee cord, it jerked back upward and then crashed on top of Dead Man's Creek, imploding into a large pile of sticks. Is everyone alive? Connor asked as he and Alex brushed the debris off themselves.
Their friends, the soldiers, and all the witches moaned. Everyone was covered in bits from the former tavern. Goldilocks sat up and vomited again. Is that from the baby or from the drop? Jack asked. I'm not sure, Goldilocks said. Gargalina roared, still fighting the vines wrapped around her. You've destroyed our tavern, she yelled. You'll pay for this. Yeah, bill us, Connor said, and helped his sister and their friends to their feet. What happened to the masked man? Froggy asked. Connor looked at Alex, but she couldn't bring herself to say it. Her friends had given up months of their lives to help search for the masked man, only to go home with nothing. The guilt was unbearable, and Alex felt like her life was just as wrecked as the tavern. He's gone, Connor told the others, like, really gone. Within the hour, Sir Lambton and a small fleet from the Charming Kingdom's soldiers joined them at the wrecked tavern. They had been stationed in the woods nearby in case the twins needed them. They rounded up the remaining Grand Armée soldiers, and the witches put all of them in restraints. Alex sat on a boulder by the creek, decompressing from the night's events. Connor walked over and put a hand on her shoulder. If anything good comes from tonight, at least we know none of the witches are behind the missing children, he said. Although she would never admit it, the missing children couldn't be further from her mind. I never expected that he would rather take his own life than face us, she said. I never would have made the tavern float if I thought he would jump. But you did actually... But did you actually make the tavern float, or did it just happen? Connor asked. A lot of things have just been happening lately. Alex rolled her eyes and walked away from him, but he followed her. Ever since you saw the masked man's face, you've been having a difficult time controlling your powers, he said. It's just something that you should be really careful of. Why are you still calling him the masked man? Alex yelled. He is our father, Connor. I know what I saw. Why don't you believe me? I wouldn't have spent the last 5 months helping you search for him if I didn't believe that you saw something, he said. I just can't fully accept that it's our father until I see his face. Alex sighed. Well, he's dead, so neither of us has to worry about him ever again, she said. I just wish that I could have gotten to help him in time, to change him back to the man that we knew. Connor nodded. Well, now you can just focus on fixing yourself. He wasn't nearly as upset as his sister because in truth he had never believed that the masked man was their father. No matter how many times she reenacted the story, he knew that their dad could never do what the masked man had done to the fairy tale world, although Connor could never bring himself to tell his sister how he really felt. What should we do about the Grand Armée and the witches? Sir Lambton called out to the twins. Take the Grand Armée soldiers to Pinocchio prison, Alex instructed. But let the witches go. I want to set the record straight that I have nothing against them. Yes, fairy godmother, Sir Lambton said. A Charming Kingdom soldier emerged from the woods and ran to Sir Lambton's side. Sir, we searched the forest, but there was no sign of the masked man, he said. We searched the area that we were certain he had fallen into, but we didn't find a body or any trace of him. Alex and Connor looked at each other in shock. What? She said. Could he be alive? How could he survive that fall? Connor asked. Alex darted her eyes around the creek and landed on Colonel Rambert. She charged toward him. Her eyes began to glow, and her hair began to float above her head. Hi, Grace. Once again, her anger had taken control. Alex, what are you doing? Connor asked and ran after her. Before he could stop her, the trees around the creek had suddenly come to life. They grabbed every person at the creek except for Alex with their branches and held them tightly to their trunks. Connor, his friends, the witches, the soldiers of the Grand Armée, and the Charming Kingdom were all prisoners of Alex's subconscious. The tree holding Colonel Rambert detached itself from the ground and held him in the air in front of Alex. How did he survive the fall? You must know, she yelled. I assure you, mademoiselle, I do not, he said. The tree tightened its grip on his body, but it wasn't the only one. All the trees at the creek squeezed their captives tighter. Alex, calm down! You're hurting us! Connor pleaded. His sister practically was in a trance. He had never seen her so angry. Nothing existed around her but Colonel Rambert and the answers that she needed from him. What does the potion that he stole from the fairy palace do? Alex asked. What else does he need to recruit the army that he spoke of? He never told us, Rambert said. He was very secretive. The branches wrapped around Rambert's throat and choked him. Then you must know where he's headed, Alex exclaimed. Tell us!
Rumbear was gagging. He could barely speak. I don't know. He coughed. I swear. Knock it off, Alex! Connor screamed. Alex came to her senses and the trees returned to normal, dropping their cactus to the ground. She looked around the creek in bewilderment at what she had just caused, like she had become another person entirely. Her brother and all her friends stared at her in shock. None of them, including Alex, knew that she was capable of such a thing. I am so sorry, Alex said, tears coming to her eyes. I don't know what came over me. She covered her face and ran into the forest. Her brother didn't even try following her. It was obvious that she wanted to be alone. I'm afraid for the masked man in our search. I'm afraid that our search for the masked man is far from over, Froggy said, breaking the tension. Connor nodded, but continuing their search for the masked man wasn't what any of them were afraid of. They were afraid of his sister. Whoa. We only got a tiny portion of that chapter at the end of the last book. That is crazy pants. Okay, whoa. So, like, I think it's pretty obvious that it's not their dad, that it's their uncle, right? Like, I mean, we don't know that. It hasn't been said to us by the author, but Alex thinks it's their dad because they must look so much alike that she thinks it's their dad. But, like, she's losing control wildly. They need to call their mom. Alex needs to call their mom. I mean, Connor needs to call their mom. Connor needs to bring their mom in to rein her in because some craziness is going on. And maybe if their mom is there, she'll recognize that it's not their dad. Wow. Wow. That's crazy. That's crazy town. The crazy girl. Crazy. There were a lot of characters to get through in that. There were a lot of character voices. Wild town. He's a great writer. It was a great chapter. Should we look at what the title of the next one is? I gotta go because I have to go down to Orange County. But the next chapter is called Do You Accept the Charges? Huh. Chapter 2 is called Do You Accept the Charges? Wild. Wild. Well, I'll see you all later. That was crazy. Yeah, me too, Amanda. I'm constantly blown away. It's magical. He's great. He's a great writer. Really, really great. All right, I'm gonna get showered and get a move on and get all these errands done. No, just me. Just me. He has to work. All right, bye guys.